And with that, question number 1. I am a Marine Corps vet, only 4 years, and I recently hired another Marine. He had a great reputation and a lot of experience as NCO leader, gunny sergeant. But he's not doing well in our company. He only seems to lead through fear/authority. It isn't working. He has high standards, which I like, but he's not gaining the respect of his team or the rest of the company. What's going on, and how can I fix it?
This is kind of a classic case, and unfortunately, it's an unfortunate case too. And what we have here is an example of a guy that's probably pretty charismatic. He's probably pretty aggressive. He's probably pretty loud. He's probably pretty authoritative. He's probably pretty smart. He's probably physically impressive. In other words, he's probably got a lot of natural good leadership traits. And I surmise in a situation like this that this is the type of person that took the basics of what the military taught him and utilized it to lead. And so what he did was he used imposed discipline. That's what got used on him, and that's what he used. So it's the things that we just talked about. It's intimidation. It's the whole thing with maneuver warfare versus attrition warfare that the military still teaches, unfortunately. That the job of leaders is to obey orders and ensure orders are obeyed. Okay, that's what the military, unfortunately, in some cases teaches. And you can go through your career and that's what you can kind of learn. Or you can have some good leadership inside the military that teaches you the better way, the way to actually lead. And so, but if you're raised that the way that your job as a leader is to obey orders and ensure that orders are obeyed, if that's your job, how do you do that? Mm-hmm. Well, you do it through blunt force trauma. That's how you do it. And as I've said before, that does work for a time period. It does get the job done. It's micromanagement. And fortunately or unfortunately, in the military, you've got people that rapidly cycle through leadership positions. And so it's not like you are permanently in charge of the same group of people. So you can kind of get away with it because you do a workup and the workup is stressful, and then you go on deployment. Deployment's only 6 months long, and by the time you're done, everybody hates you, but it's okay. You're moving on to your next job. Mm-hmm. And so that's how people survive. And what really hurts about this is because they survive that leadership position, it actually reinforces that type of leadership behavior, which is not good. But what they do is, if let's say you do, it's just an American kind of mindset of, hey, if some is good, more is better. And so they take this attitude and they become more aggressive. They impose more discipline. They raise the standards to a ridiculous level where it's no longer even sensible, where things just become stupid. Like we used to say, so I don't know why they called this, but in the military they called a push-up position the front-leaning rest.
Sure.
Front-leaning rest. I don't know why. And then they also use the term forward-leaning, meaning, hey, we want to be ahead, we want to be ready, we want to be prepared. Yeah. And I used to say, let's not be so far forward-leaning that we're in the leaning rest, meaning that we're leaning so far forward that we're wasting our energy and getting tired. Mm-hmm. And so at a certain point, it can become stupid. An example of this would be like uniform inspections. Like, okay, you got to have a squared away uniform. You know, you got to be able to break out your uniform, look sharp. Mm-hmm. Well, if you do that every day, you're wasting time because it's not the most important thing. It does have a level of importance somewhere on the hierarchy of important things. Not real high, but there's some people, if you're a strict military disciplinarian, you might think I need to have a uniform inspection every single day because my guys are going to look the best. Yeah. And so you got a bunch of guys that not only are they wasting time prepping their uniform and paying for the uniform to get dry cleaned, and they're actually using their uniform so much, their dress uniform so much that they're providing wear and tear on it. Mm-hmm. And so it's just stupid. Doesn't make any sense. So that's that's what they do. These leaders that have been raised like that, they start to do it even more, and it defeats its own purpose. And most important is that these leaders start to stifle free thought from their subordinates. And eventually, and this is even more critical, eventually they begin to stifle free thought from their own brain. And that's likely what happened in a situation like this. And, you got a guy that, again, was raised in this attitude, and he took that attitude and he amplified that attitude, and that is how he was successful, and he amplified it even more. And he ends up, now he breaks out of the Marine Corps. Well, now it's not just a 6-month deployment. You got to lead people for years and years and years, and you got to go through different various projects and all these personalities, and it's a more sensitive environment because it's in the civilian sector and lives aren't necessarily at stake. And so what do you need to do? What you need him to see. So now I'm talking to the leader that asked this question. What can you do to help? Well, what you need that former Marine gunnery sergeant to do, what you need him to see, is that the next level of leadership, the next progression along the spectrum of leadership is not more of all that. It's actually less. It's not more imposed discipline on your troops. It's actually less. It's the troops having free thought and self-discipline. And it is not you leading more. It is actually you leading less. It is not you taking more ownership. It is you taking less ownership and your troops taking more ownership. It is him giving guidance, giving commander's intent, and then stepping back. It is him not being the focus, because a lot of times when you're in a leadership position, that can be an ego feeder. And all of a sudden you want to be the center of attention. You want to be in the spotlight. But you don't want to be that. You want to be less of that. And I'm telling you, so that's what you got to do. You got to open his eyes to what the next level of leadership looks like. He's never had that opened for him. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be hard to get him there, because there's a good chance that he's a hard person to coach, because he's been successful with the techniques that he learned, and he has experience. And that experience has strengthened his resolve and his belief in his leadership technique. It's a tough situation. So you're likely going to have to take an indirect approach. And so, for instance, here's a good one. Hey, I was wondering, who's going to take your place when it's time for promotion? Who are you grooming to fill your shoes? Because guess what? He's not grooming anybody. Or you ask him how much time he's spending looking up and out at what's going on in the strategic, as opposed to down and in at his own little element. And the other thing that you could do is assign him some higher level projects that actually pull him out of the micromanagement weeds. And maybe even put him on projects with people that don't micromanage. And good leaders that lead in a good way, put him on some kind of project with them so he can see what that looks like. And obviously, these are just some suggestions of approaches, because you're probably going to have to, you'll have to adapt those and figure out exactly how to walk him through to the end state, which the end state, the commander's intent from me is, you want to teach him what the next level, the next advancement of leadership skill for him is. And it's something that's the opposite of what he learned. So, good challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, that leading from authority thing, and fear and authority, it's almost like it's so black and white, where when someone does that, it's so clear.
It's very clear, and it's very addictive for the person, because there's immediate gratification. I told you to do it. And so they do it, and then, okay, see, it worked.
Yeah. kind of takes less work too. A lot of the time,
It totally takes
people,
less work. You don't have to invest in relationships. You don't
Yeah.
have to invest in indirect approaches on things. Of course, it takes less work. It's real simple.
Yeah, you can kind of give in to your temper sometimes too.
Yeah,
and it's just,
your temper's a little bit of a tool with that kind
Yeah,
of.
yeah.
The problem is, over time, that type of leadership doesn't work.
Yep.
You want to be the beloved captain, who never lost his
Yeah.
temper, who never yelled at his men, and yet who would follow him into the fires of hell.
Yep.